Okay, بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So we're now on to Zakat al-Fitr. The last week we spoke about Zakat. Now we're talking about Zakat al-Fitr. So Zakat al-Fitr is also called Zakat al-Abdan. Abdan in Arabic means bodies, meaning is a zakat that you pay for every single person you are obliged to support at the end of Ramadan. So Ramadan finishes, is then Eid al-Fitr. On Eid al-Fitr, you give charity, you give zakat, not according to your wealth, but according to the number of people that you are obliged to support. Okay? So if there's a man and a wife, he has to support himself and his wife. If there was a man and a wife and 5 kids, then he has to support himself, his wife, and his 5 kids. So that's 7. Man and a wife and kids and his parents who are not able to support themselves. Then he has to support them, right? A man and his wife and the kids he has to support, plus the minors that are unable to work, his siblings who are unable to work, whom his parents have to support. So what does that mean? It means if you are obliged to support your parents, your father specifically, if you are obliged to support your father, and your father is obliged to support somebody, then you have to support that person. Okay? Now, a practical and useful point is a woman, okay, in the Shafi school, a woman is financially independent, okay? And obviously, she across the other schools. But what does that mean? It means when she reaches puberty and she is able to make her own income, okay, then she is not, you do not have to support her. So let's say my daughter right now, my daughter is 6, sorry. Is she able to work? Has she reached puberty? And is she able to work her own living? No, she's not. Okay. But in 12 years, now she's 18, when she's finished high school, she can go and work a job and she can live with some friends, right? Share an apartment with somebody. She can get by, right? If she's bringing in $1,500, $2,000, right? She can survive. So therefore, I'm not obliged to support her anymore. So therefore, I do not pay zakat for her anymore. And if I do pay zakat for her, that doesn't count. Unless she appoints me as her agent to do so. Just like any of you, right? Somebody comes up to me and says, Farid, I'm going to pay zakat or fitr for you. I say, oh, great. Please pay it for 5 people. And you say, okay, and you go and pay it, right? In that jovial, friendly conversation, that other person who is not related to me, not financially related to me or anything else, or legally related to me, became my agent. They said, I'm going to do this. Is that okay? And I said, sure, fine. So the same thing applies with your daughter or your son. Once they reach the age that they could actually pay their own zakat al-fitr. If you pay zakat al-fitr for them, it doesn't count unless they make you an agent, because you're considered ajnabi, you're considered somebody who is financially alien to them, right? There's no financial connection between the two of you. Okay, so it only counts if they say, yeah, sure, right? Okay, thanks, Dad, appreciate it. You know, let's say I'm paying for his college and I'm paying for his car payments and I'm paying for something else. I say, hey, you got to cover your phone bill, you got to cover your electricity bill. So like, fine. Okay. When zakat al-fitr comes, I say, hey, by the way, I'm paying zakat al-fitr for you. Okay. Right. But without that okay, it doesn't count. Okay. Does that make sense? Nadir, you just put thumbs up. Good. Sister Samina, Sister Sandra, makes sense?
Yes.
Right. And so it's very important to know whom are you obliged to support and whom you're not obliged to support. Okay, it's very important to know that. Because yes, by default, we want to support everybody, right? But you might end up supporting the person who does not deserve your support while not supporting the person who does. I'll give you a classic example, okay? Classic example. Sister Fatima, okay? She's working, her husband is working, okay? The two of them with a joint income, they are keeping the house going, paying off the house, paying the bills, paying the rent, paying the electricity, buying the food, etc. Her and her husband, okay? In her mind, that's just how it works, right? That's just how it works. Like the two of us work. We've always done that. The two of us both work. We have a joint account. The salary goes in every year. We have a financial plan and we do this together. Okay. Her dad becomes sick. Okay. And she can't afford to support him. Okay. Because her salary is going towards her household. Right. And so she's like, man, I can't support my dad. Right. I wish I could. Right. Now, what's wrong with that picture?
She could be helping her father, but instead she's supporting her husband when he's supposed to be supporting her.
Exactly. So supporting your husband is great, mashallah. The Prophet ﷺ said, to Abdullah ibn Mas'ud's wife, like if you do that, if you help support your husband, it's like you're doing two things at once. You're giving sadaqah, it's like giving charity, plus you're doing silat rahim. You're bringing together the most important ties, which is husband and wife. So the best person for a wife to give charity to is her husband. But what's more important, charity or nafaqah? Well, what's more important, charity or financial, someone who's dependent upon you. So now this woman's like, oh my God, I wish I could help my dad, but I can't. Sorry, Dad. I'm really, maybe I can, she's starting up, for example, GoFundMe, something, my dad's got sick, he can't work anymore. And her paradigm is off because she's thinking, well, why would I support my dad? I've never done that, right? He's always been the one supporting me. And like, that's kind of strange. Like he's early 60s. Why would that happen? Whereas the opposite. If he doesn't have savings, he's not able to support himself, she has to support him, right? If there's no brothers, or if there's brothers, all four of them will equally support, right? So her and her three brothers that will equally support the father. And so she's thinking, I'm doing the right thing, right? By, spending on my husband, but that's not an obligation, right? And she's thinking, well, if I didn't do that, we might lose the house. That's your husband's problem. That's your husband's problem, right? It's not like we're trying to be cold or harsh, but there's priorities in the Sharia and you're not seeing them in the right place, right? Just like, for example, another example, just kind of things of priorities. Who has more right over her husband or her father? Her husband, in terms of being with her, right? So her husband really needs her husband wants her to be with her, but then she really wants to visit her dad, and she hasn't seen her dad for a long time. And then she goes, and the dad says, "Come and live with me, please. Like, just come with me, live with me. I've probably got 6 months left." Right? And so she's like, "Oh, I'm torn. Should I be with my husband or should I be with my father?" Right? And if her husband says no, then that's wrong. She can't do that. And she's thinking, yeah, but he's only got 6 months left, so I have to be with him, right? And so you're doing the wrong thing, right? So it's very important to understand who do you have to support and who do you not have to support, right? Somebody, for example, is making life very difficult for his wife by supporting his kids when they're old enough to work by themselves, right? So he, for example, making things very difficult and by supporting them in their education, when he's not obliged to support for example, for their degree, right? Now, in some countries, that might not be the case. So I'll just give an example. It's not necessarily the fatwa, right? But in Jordan, right, which is by default based on Islamic law, the family law, right, states that you're obliged to support your child until they finish their bachelor's, right? So their ijtihad, their judgment is that if you don't have a bachelor's, you're not able to work, right? That's how that's what they're saying is basically if you don't have a bachelor's, then you don't have to then you're not able to work, So that's why you have to support your child through primary education, secondary education, and their undergrad, right? Not their master's and PhD, right? That's an ijtihad, and perhaps that's an argument, right? Somebody could say, no, you are obliged to support your children until they finish their first degree, and if you're able to pay for it, that you have to pay for it, right? Allahu a'lam, right? But that's a kind of a modern ijtihad. But the default is puberty, and they can work, right? And that will change from place to place and time to time, right? But generally speaking, have they reached puberty? Yes. Are they able to work enough to support themselves? Yes. Okay, you're not obliged to support them anymore, and then you know zakat will be paid for them. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
So it says zakat al-fitr has to be paid by every Muslim who possesses more than his actual needs. So what we do is you say divide up your needs, right? We're not talking about basic needs. We're talking about normal needs. So for example, if you didn't have AC in your house, could you survive? Yes. If you didn't have electricity in your house, could you survive? Yes. If you didn't have flowing water in your house, yes, I could. I can go and buy water from somewhere else. But these are normal needs, right? Electricity, depending where you are, fridge, freezer, a car, two cars. These are normal needs, right? So if you put someone's normal needs, right, on the scale, where depending where they live, it can be quite a lot, right? So we say, do you have enough money to pay that? So yeah, I do, right? I have enough money. I have enough money to pay these things. Do you have any debts whatsoever? Do you have any debts? No, I have no debts. Okay, great. So you have enough money to pay for today's needs, correct? And you don't have any debts, correct? Okay. So how much money do you have excess? I have lots of money excess. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Fantastic. So now you're going to pay zakat al-fitr, which is a fixed amount for each person you have to support, which includes yourself, your wife, child number one, child number two, child number three, etc. Right? If you are not married as a man and you're able to support yourself, then just yourself. If you're not married and you're able to support yourself as a woman, then just yourself. Okay? But it's a fixed amount. It does not increase based on how much money you have. It is simply a condition that you have enough money. Okay, does that make sense? So for zakat, you say, how much money do you have? And you're going to pay 1/40 of that. Zakat al-fitr, we don't say that. We say, do you have enough money to survive today? Yes. How many people are you personally obliged to support? So and so and so and so and so and so. Okay, great. For each of these people, you need to pay a fixed amount. Okay, the picture makes sense? Sister Samina, is this your first day in the class?
Yes,
Okay, where are you joining from?
I'm from Texas.
Okay, great. Okay. Okay. So it says its amount is 4 mud. Now, this is very important as well. So first of all, when we're learning deen, we're learning fiqh, there are certain world views and certain world paradigms that we are learning at the same time. Because we are learning fiqh as taught and as applied 1,400 years ago. And so the world from 1,400 years ago until very recently was quite similar, right? Until the Industrial Revolution, there was lots of similar things. For example, at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there were no schools. Until the Industrial Revolution, 1 to 5% of the world went to school, and 99 to 95% of the world did not go to school because everybody works. Okay, and everybody is working in the fields trying to get by. That's how we work. And so the way the world works is based on crops. Okay, crops. That's what we're trying to do. Everyone is trying to work in a paddy field, work in a wheat field, work on a potato farm, whatever it is to try and get by, right? Get maize, whatever it is. Corn. And so the basic thing to help the poor that you would give in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, and until recently throughout the world, is that basic thing that everybody is working for. Everybody is trying to get some food. So you are going to give food to people. That's what you're going to give. And so it says its amount, and it's not just any food, but it is storable food. So it is food that is both edible and is the main staple of your country, meaning this is the food that we eat. So if it's in South America, it's maize, corn. If it's in, I don't know, England or Scotland in the past, it was oats, right? Other places are going to be barley, other places are going to be rice, other people, etc., are going to be wheat, etc. But that was the main thing. That is your life, right? For example, in Egyptian Arabic, in colloquial Egyptian Arabic, they refer to bread as life. They call it aish, they call it life, right? That is the basic thing that people live on. And everything else is extra. Having meat is extra. Having condiments on top of it, a sauce is extra. But the most basic thing that people survive on is their daily bread, right? Even look at the Lord's Prayer, right? In Christianity, give us this day our daily bread. The idea of the daily bread. Everybody is just trying to get by to get their daily bread. That's how it worked. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he legislated to people and he said, on this day, it's a day of Eid. Okay, you've learned this lesson in Ramadan to empathize with the poor and hungry. So on Eid, let's stop the poor and hungry from begging and let's feed them. So everybody should go and get a scoop, right? A scoop, a mud, okay? And you're going to scoop out 4 scoops of food, of the main staple that you eat, be it wheat, be it rice, be it whatever it is, and you're going to go and give it to the poor and needy on that day, okay? That's how it worked. Now, fast forward, not that long, right? Not that fast. You don't have to go that far forward, but fast forward to where we are right now, okay? You have internet. The people who are financially struggling, you have electricity, you have food is an issue for many people, right? Food is an issue for many people, but it's not the main thing. For many people, it's going to be the rent that they're going to be struggling with, bills, other kind of things. Because the Industrial Revolution, the use of tractors and industry and farming has drastically changed food production. So the default fatwa of the Shafi'is and the Malikis and the Hanbalis is that irrespective of what is happening in the world, you have to give 4 scoops of locally consumed grain, the ghalib qut al-balad, the main staple of your country, right? That's what you have to give. It doesn't matter if you live in New York, or you live in Jamaica, or you live in some developing country or third world country. It's irrelevant. The Prophet ﷺ told us to give this certain amount of main staple, and this is what you have to give. There's no way out of it, okay? Because it's a ritual, right? Just like fasting is a ritual, right? You can't change it. That's the position of the majority of ulama. Now, the Hanafis, they say no. The point is freeing people from need. And so if you can give anything else that has the same market value, that's totally fine. So what you would do then is you would say, what is 4 mud? Okay, this is a certain amount. Okay, this is approximately 2 liters. It's a volume, okay? 2 liters, right? If you got a liter and filled it with grain, okay, of wheat, of barley, of rice, for example. Okay, so let's say, for example, I'm in certain places in India where they eat rice. Okay, what I will do then is I'll say, the Hanafis will say, listen, get this volume, right? Get this volume that you're talking about and find out how much it costs. How much would it cost to get that much rice? And they say $5, $10. Say, fine, just go and give $5 to the poor. Don't worry about it. The Shafi'is would say, no, you can't do that. You're obliged to give the rice. You're obliged to give the wheat. You have to give that food that people eat. And it has to be uncooked. It can't be cooked. You can't just give people food like that because they might want to store it, they might want to sell it. The Hanafis, they say just anything that's the same financial amount. If it's the same amount that could buy them that rice, it doesn't matter. And this is basically the fatwa that you find throughout the world today. So like in Morocco in the past, they used to follow the Maliki school on that issue. They just gave up. In Saudi Arabia, they used to follow the Hanbali position, but then it became a joke, right? What you'd see on Eid is a bunch of people lining up, trying to get their wheat, and then going to sell it to a wheat factory, right? And then like and not meaning much, and then just like losing money basically. So everyone just said, forget it, right? We'll just follow the Hanafi school. We respect all the four madhahib, they're all valid. And so we follow the Hanafi school on this issue, which is we just give the amount, right? And now different mosques on at the end of Ramadan, they'll give different values, right? And so what they're trying to do is they're trying to estimate the highest possible amount. The highest possible amount. Because A, nobody really cares between difference between $7 and $10 in most places in the West, for example, and nobody really and you know it doesn't. All you're doing is just telling somebody give a charity, right? It's just once a year, right? So you might see, for example, one mosque puts like $2, another mosque puts $10, and like, well, that's a huge difference. How did you get such a difference? They just rounded it up. They use different equations. They use different calculations. There's different ways you could, you know, how much would it get you, for example, to send it to your house or whatever it is. So, you know, that's the basic picture. Okay, but it has to be paid for you if you're obliged to support yourself, and for those you have to support. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, and so it's given on the day of Eid, okay, or during the night preceding it. Okay, and in the Shafi'i school, we can actually give it, and this is very practical, we can give it from the very beginning of Ramadan, right? So your masjid is dealing with millions of dollars in Ramadan. In Laylatul Qadr, they raised 1 million. Before that, they had this. Before they had that. It's a huge masjid with, mashallah, wealthy people that are coming. And they're trying to get money to people in need, right? And they need to deal with logistics. So they need to save early, as opposed to on the day of Eid itself, right? How are they going to get that money to those people on the day of Eid itself? So the Shafi'is, they say, it's okay, as soon as Ramadan comes in, the very first day of Ramadan, you can give zakat al-fitr. But it's not obliged to. You're only obliged to do it on the day itself. Okay? And so that's a practical thing in the Shafi'i school to use, right? That you can just do that from the very beginning. Other schools, I don't think they allow that. I think they allow, for example, a few days before, or you know, maybe 3 days before, but not much before that. So it's a very useful thing to do it well in advance, right? Now, here's the catch. Here's the catch. We said in the Shafi'i school, you have to give grain, right? I'm going to follow the Hanafi school saying, oh, it's okay, we can just give the monetary equivalent. The Shafi'i school, we say you can give it early, right? And I don't know if the Hanafis can do that. So here's a problem, is that you're kind of mixing and matching in a way that the Hanafis might say, hey, that's not even, that's too early. Like, that's called charity, bro. That's not called zakat, so that doesn't count. Okay. The other thing then is the Shafis will tell us that you have to give it in your locality. Okay. So Sister Samina, which city do you live in? Or Sister Sandra, which city do you live in?
Willowbrook.
Willowbrook. Okay. So now you're thinking, well, there's people in the world who are starving. I should give it to them. And the Shafi school says, no, you cannot do that. Zakat al-Fitr and Zakat al-Mal, zakat has to go locally. It can only be given locally. It's for the local poor people. It's for the debtors, people who are in debt in your locality. It's for people who are poor in your locality. It's for people who are who need to travel in your locality. There's the other whole eight categories of zakat. Okay, and so it cannot be given out. So here's an issue where if you just mix and match, you might have problems, right? And so it's better for zakat al-fitr, you know, in your locality, whatever they're going to do, it's like, okay, we respect all madhahib, that's fantastic. But because the Hanafi school is the only school that allows you to pay the financial equivalent, you should do everything on the Hanafi school. Just go, you guys, somebody get some Hanafi guy, tell me the whole spiel, right? And because otherwise you're going to mix and match, and you might, for example, send it somewhere else, but that doesn't count in the Shafi school. Or you send the value, but that doesn't count in the Shafi school. But then you did it early, and that doesn't count in the Hanafi school. It's like, whoops, right? So then at the end of the day, what you did, nobody considers valid. Okay? So, you know, when we're saying check this or check this madhab or that madhab. Not trying to be annoying. We're trying to say, like, has one body of scholarship actually okayed what you've just done? And you're like, no, like nobody's looking what you've just did as good. So you should, that's what we should do. And we respect all madhahib, it's all fantastic, and there's wisdom in all of them. But for zakat al-fitr, we should say, ask the Hanafis, they say, guys, what should we do? And generally speaking, you should. I'm not sure exactly how early they can do it, right? I don't think they can do it right at the beginning of Ramadan, and they say you can do it globally, meaning you can give it to another place totally, right? And they say as well you can give it in the monetary equivalent as opposed to grain, right? So we should check with them the details exactly of when can you give it out and follow them, because to make sure that it's guaranteed that it's legitimate, right? Okay, it is not permitted to give zakat al-fitr except to a Muslim, right? So there's a debate, okay? There's a debate among the scholars, right? Because one of the categories Allah mentions in the Quran is al-mu'allafati qulubuhum, those whose hearts are to be warmed to Islam, right? And so some of the ulama, and Imam Shafi'i originally, he was of the opinion that yes, you could do that. If there was like a group of people who kind of like wanted to become Muslim, you could give zakat of them to kind of bring them closer. You could do that. That's not the Shafi school, though. Imam Shafi rejected that position, and he said, no, you can't do that. And so the Shafis, they agree that you can't do that. You can't give zakat ever to non-Muslims. So somebody who's poor, poor Muslim in your locality, somebody who is in debt in your locality, right, who's a Muslim, has to specifically be a Muslim. Okay, of the 8 categories, and do we have the 8 categories here? Mentions it here. The poor and destitute, so people who are poor, the employed in the zakat collectors, the people who are trying to buy their freedom from slavery, somebody who's in debt, right? And the debt is currently due, right? The debt is currently due. Somebody who's in a voluntary mujahid, somebody who's using their own funds to go on jihad, and somebody who needs to travel, right? Okay, so anyway, there's other groups there, but so they have to be Muslim, and then they cannot be from Ahl Bayt, they cannot be from the descendants of the Prophet ﷺ, meaning they're not Hashimi, and they're not Muttalibi. Okay, they're not from either those of those branches of Quraysh. Okay, right, and so you have to find out these groups, right? So it's not okay with charity. You don't have to be annoying. You don't have to be pedantic, right? Somebody says, hey, we need some help. Can you give some charity? Sure. The guy's a liar. Doesn't matter, right? Oh, my dad's sick. Well, I mean, he sneezed. What does that mean? Right? What does that even mean? Right? So if the person's a liar, it doesn't matter. Charity is not a problem. Zakat is somebody else's money, right? That's money that belongs to somebody. It's not your money. So you cannot be easy going with it. You have to double check and triple check. Is this person actually a zakat recipient, right? And unfortunately, with mosques, okay, and organizations, you need to double check, okay? So not every mosque knows what they're doing. Every mosque is well-intended, inshallah, and every mosque is trustworthy, inshallah. But well-intended and trustworthy do not mean accuracy. They're not the same thing, right? A brain surgeon who is well-intended and trustworthy but not trained is dangerous, right? And so often that can happen. So you can't just give zakat to, I put my zakat in the zakat box and that's it. You can't do that. You have to go and ask the board, how do you do zakat? Who administers it? Tell me what happens with it. And then you find, lo and behold, for example, they I don't know, they did something crazy with it, right? They invested it. They said, well, we invest it for the poor. They can't do that, right? They invested it for the poor. They don't have a right to do that. They said, well, and we're going to give the poor more money. I said, yeah, no, but you can't do that. You have to give the poor their money, right? Or whatever else they did, right? So many people, they have good intentions, but they have no clue what they're doing, okay? They have no clue what they're doing. And so it's very important that you be pedantic, right? And be a bit annoying. And it's better that you kind of, for example, find a scholar and say, hey, Sheikh, I'm trusting you to give this to somebody legitimate. Can I do that? And he's like, yes or no, right? As opposed to giving it to a masjid that you have no idea, do they know what they're doing or not, right? And, or I don't know, something else, right? So the default in the Muslim world is chaos, unfortunately, right? That's the default. The default is that it's kind of like things are a bit silly, that you question and you realize there's actually no system here, right? And so may Allah reward everybody who's involved in these kind of things. It doesn't matter what they're doing, that's great, but that doesn't mean that you can give them their zakat, right? You should ask them specifically this and double check, why not? One sheikh is saying this, double check. Hey, is this, does this person know what he's talking about? Because I'm going to do this, and on Judgment Day, I don't want to have given somebody's money to somebody else, right? Like zakat is like selling somebody money, right? Like I'm gonna do an international transfer. I need to know exactly that this is this person, because there's no way going back, right? And if the company or the individual contacts you and says, "Hey, you never sent the money," said, "No, I did." And it's like, "Well, did you check?" So yeah, I checked, and I sent. Look, I checked the details before I clicked OK. I sent it to you, and you said OK. That's why I sent it to you, right? But the thing is, the poor can't do that because they aren't a specific person until you give it to them. So you have to be very, very careful. Is this zakat eligible or not? Right? And unfortunately, many mosques do well-intended, silly things with zakat money. Right? Many mosques do well-intended, wrong, erroneous things with zakat money. Right? And so, yes, it's a problem. Okay, any questions on zakat? Any specific things? Okay, I'm going to go on to Hajj. Okay, so it says Hajj and Umrah. Hajj is the fifth pillar of Islam. It is a fard on every free Muslim, right? So you are Muslim, correct? Are you free or are you a slave? I'm not a slave, no, I'm free. Who is mukallaf, who is morally responsible, meaning they've reached puberty. As is Umrah. So the Shafi school is unique in that we say that the Umrah is obligatory. Okay, go ahead, Nadir, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Sheikh.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering, how much of a obligation is it of ours, or is it at all, to try to correct the masjid, or to give them advice, or to give advice to other Muslims to say, I know that this organization is not the best place to pay your zakat, or the masjid doesn't really handle zakat funds appropriately. It's going to mosque construction or something. You should probably do it on your own.
Okay, so
Or is
yes.
it just
So
a
if it's
thing as long
yeah, if it's
on our own
genuine, if it's genuine theft,
as our community
then
is
you're
doing?
obliged to say it, right? So you know this zakat is going to someone's pocket, and a genuine theft, you're obliged to come out and say it. And if that nobody does anything, you go to the police, right? You say this is happening. Like there's nobody I can talk to other than the police. I'm gonna go to the police. Say, listen, this is the case. This is what these people are doing, right? They're gathering. You know, this masjid is get registered as a company, and you know they have to declare these things. They're not doing it, and this money is, they're doing this, and so that you have to do that, right? That's something else. If they're doing something fishy, okay, and you think it's a very weird fiqh answer, okay? So let's say, for example, you're Shafi'i, and you said, well, I learned in Shafi'i fiqh that you have to give it locally, and they're not doing it locally. Are you obliged to go and tell the whole world, hey, this masjid is not following the Shafi'i school? No. Okay, so what about if, for example, if they're not following any of the form of their hib? Then your obligation, right, is to talk to the people who know, right, or at least talk to the board and say, hey, guys, at least state what you're doing, right? State what you're doing. Say, listen, we as a board, we have decided to follow the fatwa of so-and-so, right? Some modern fatwa that exists, while bearing in mind that this is not the traditional default fatwa given by the former dhahib, and so anybody giving a zakat, you should know that, right? So it's the right of the person who's doing that, or rather the obligation of the person who's giving that zakat to know those things. Okay? Does that make sense? So when it's going to go off in a tangent slightly, like, oh, this is not the former dhahib, or this is not this, or this is not that, and this is just in a minority opinion, then it's like it's your obligation to know that. It's a bit like, for example, you go to a doctor, right? You're taking your child and he's saying, listen, by the way, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to follow the book on your child. I'm doing something totally different. I hope you're okay with that. As opposed to, that's not, like, you go to a doctor, you assume that they're going to treat you in the normal way, that this is how we do things in America, right? And so if you're not going to do that, please come and tell me, because I'm trusting you. Okay, does that make sense? So here is kind of an issue of either you make it public with a way that doesn't cause fuss. No, you go to the board and say, guys, you have to tell the people what you're doing. And if you don't, I will do something about it. Like, I will, because I respect that there's difference of agreement, and sometimes people have different opinions, and this modern sheikh has this opinion. That's totally fine. That's great. But this isn't what normal Muslims do, right? So there's a kind of an assumption that this is going to happen. And so you are ruining it for them. Like, they're assuming that you're doing this, but you're not. So you need to tell them, right? Does that make sense, Nadir?
Yes. Jazakallah khair.
Okay, right. But generally, if it's within the form of their head, nobody cares, right? I mean, like, most people, like in England, I'll give you an example, right? In England, people are hardcore Hanafi, right? So like, I got to tell you, like, if I'm going to take you on a Hajj group, and it's not going to do it the Hanafi way, they would be really upset, because they're like, for them, it's like, Hanafi is deen, right? Whereas in America, at least what I've seen, right? As long as people like saying, is this something that normal Muslim scholars traditionally have said, right? Be it whatever madhab it is, right? They don't really care. The issue is then when you go out on a limb, right? Say, I'm going out on a limb, and this is our reason. If you want to follow it, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Okay. And there is a problem, right? There is a problem with masjids, with masjids not being transparent, right? And so it's like they do it for certain reasons, usually good reasons, right? Usually good reasons, but we need to kind of work on that, like bringing masjids up to, up to par, so that there's clear transparency of what is happening, right? One of the problems is the masjid isn't transparent because then they don't want to give control to the wrong people, right? Or it's private. For example, if I tell you how much the imam's getting, they're like, oh my God, like half the congregation is getting way less than him. So like, why is the imam paid that much money? Right? And it's like, they've made a judgment of what an imam should get paid, given he's doing A, B, and C, and given his qualifications, and given what he does. Not everybody would know that necessarily, right? Or could be the opposite, right? It's a kind of like, his salary is like embarrassingly low. So like, that could actually be awkward for somebody, right? That's like, please don't put my salary there, right? Because it's kind of awkward if you put it there. Like, why did you do that? Or, how is the cleaning bill so high, right? Surely Muslims should be, there's a classic thing, like the cleaning bill of the masjid is like ridiculously high. So then when they're too transparent, everybody gets involved and everybody has something to say. And it's like, so it is a problem, but it's a problem, particularly Muslims in the West, we have to work on a culture, right? That this is how mosques work, right? Yes, we're not part of the state. Yes, we are not, these are separate charity organizations, but we need to work in a very professional and clear way, right? And avoiding unnecessary information to everybody that doesn't need to know every single thing, but we do need to be kind of a bit clear. Okay, so Hajj is the fifth pillar. So we said in the Shafi school, the Umrah, right? The Umrah, the lesser Hajj, uniquely in the Shafi school, is an obligation. So what does that mean? That means that you have enough money to go on Umrah, but you don't have enough money to go on Hajj. Or you have enough money to go on Hajj, but it's not the Hajj season. Right? Hajj is over. So right now, today, you just had enough money to go on Hajj. Am I obliged to go on Hajj? No, because it's not the Hajj season. Okay, so that means right now you have enough money to go on Umrah, correct? So yeah. So that means it's registered in your obligation. And if you now lose that money, or you get sick, or you die, you've messed up. So the clock starts ticking as soon as you're able. So the best thing to do is as soon as you have the money to go on Umrah, go on Umrah. Just go. Within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, just do it. Go. Right? And say, oh Allah, please look after things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, will look after your matters and make sure you have enough money for Hajj as well. Right? And so that's the best thing to do. Find a clever way of doing Umrah, etc., and do it. Okay. And so, and the other thing then is with our kids, right? Many people, they save up for their kids' education, they save up for this, save up for that. That's all wrong. Okay, it's great. You want to save up the education, not a problem if you have good income, mashallah. But what you should do is save up for the time. You say, for example, you've got 3 kids. When the last one has reached puberty, take them all on Hajj. Take them all on Hajj. Oh, but that's going to put me back 5 years of my paying back of my house. That's going to do this. Don't worry about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you rizq through this, right? Don't worry about it, right? This, you know, that's what you should do. You know, make sure you start your kids off with a good start. As soon as they reach puberty, take them all on Hajj. As soon as they reach puberty, take them all on Umrah, whatever you can do, right? And so that, alhamdulillah, they've finished it. They've done it, right? And so you've done like a whole, that's like a 1/5 of their Islam, right? So it's a big thing. Okay, once in one's life on the condition that one is able to go, meaning you have the, so it says ability here means that one possesses what is needed to travel for the Hajj, for the pilgrimage back and again. So you are a man and you have a family, correct? Do you have enough money to buy the ticket? Yes. Do you have enough money to pay the rent while you're gone and coming back and to provide food and electricity for their coming there and coming back? Yes. Okay, you got to go. Oh, but I might lose my job. So by default, is you have to leave your job. That's the default. Okay. So what if the job market is really, really bad and the likelihood of you never getting a job ever again is very, very high? That's a case for fatwa. But the default is if your job says, no, you cannot go, you can't do it, then you just have to leave your job because you have the money and you have the ability and you have that to get you through that time. And even though you say, well, I come back, I won't have a job, and then I won't be able to pay the rent in like 2 months later. So what am I supposed to do? Right? That's for when you come back. Right? But the default picture is you're obliged to do that. Now, for a woman, she's not obliged to go without mahram. Okay? But she is allowed to go without a mahram. Okay? So if her husband can't go with her, or her brother cannot go with her, okay, then she's not obliged to go. But it is halal for her to go, right? So a woman in the Shafi school is allowed to travel alone with no mahram if A, she is safe, and B, she's fulfilling an obligation, like Hajj, like Umrah, like work. If she's obliged to work, for example, the only work she can find is in another city, so she's going to commute, right? The only place she can do an operation is another city, right? So then she can travel by herself if she's safe to fulfill the obligation of doing that operation, for example, or something like that, right? Learning obligatory sacred knowledge, right? Learning obligatory sacred knowledge. She's caught in a trap. She's going round and round and round a circle. She says, I need to take 6 months off. I need to go and just like be in a proper environment to change my life, right? So she can travel alone for that, right? With no mahram, provided she's safe, and obviously she's fulfilling obligation, but not a sunnah, right? And it's sunnah for the husband to help her do that, right? But she's not obliged to. He's not obliged to do that, right? It's sunnah for him to go with her, right? Or to, allow her to go and, hold the fort down while she's gone. But if he's not obliged to do that. He's not obliged, A, to pay for her Hajj, and B, not obliged to let her go, right? Because her obligation to go on Hajj can be done anytime, right? So she's not obliged to go immediately. Go ahead, Nadir.
Is a male obliged to send any of his dependents on Hajj? So it seems like the children know, maybe a sunnah. The wife, I'm hearing you're saying no. And then let's say the parents also, if the parents don't have their own means and the male is taking care of them,
No, he's not.
are
That's
they
not. That's
obliged
not.
to,
So
or is he
generally
obliged to send them
speaking,
on Hajj?
generally speaking, worship is not part of the financial support, right? And to the extreme extent, that if that in the Shafi school, a man is not actually technically obliged to pay for the water that a woman needs to make wudu, right? Which is obviously extreme. So why? Because we're saying that when these people, your parents or your wife or your children are dependents on you, they're financially dependent on you, meaning for food and drinking water and these kind of things, but not for wudu water or for ghusl water or for Hajj and Umrah, right? And so, in generally speaking, you're not obliged to do that, no, right? You know, there's no obligation for your kids or your parents or anything. And even if your parents told you, like your dad said, I hereby command you to take me on Hajj, you're not obliged to do that because you're not obliged to spend money on him for something like that. Now, should you, if you're able, of course, right? That's something else. But in terms of obligation, there's no obligation to do that. You're only obliged for yourself, right? And so a woman, for example, who is a stay-at-home mom, right? She doesn't have an income, and she's never obliged to go on Hajj because she doesn't have any money. So her husband's been on Hajj 50 times, and she's never been on Hajj in her life, right? But the Islamic thing to do would be take her with you, right? That's the Islamic thing. But in terms of obligation, he's under no obligation to do that. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yes.
So ability here means, so again, we mentioned go think, what if I was to leave my job then? That means I have to leave my job in order to go. The default is yes, you're obliged to leave your job. What if I have to sell my second house, right? I don't have the means, but I have two houses, right? So now I'm going to sell my second house, and my second house is like a significant part of my income. So, and then when I sell the house, I won't be able to buy another house for that kind of price. So then what am I going to do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala look after you, don't worry. Right? But you're not obliged to sell your first house, the house that you live in, right? You're not obliged, for example, to mortgage your house, for example, to go on Hajj. You're not obliged to do that, right? You know, if you wanted to, that's great, but you're not obliged to do that. You have a house, and you have a car, but you don't have extra money to go and pay for a ticket. You're not obliged to go, right? Particularly these days, of course, Hajj is very expensive, and so, but that's again why we should do it when we are 18, right? You're 18, first thing you should do, take a year off, work day in, day out, help your son work day in, day out, get a ticket, go on Hajj. That's the number one thing you should do, right? Go. And don't, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will look after you, right? Okay. Okay, the acts of Hajj are of three types. I think this is a good place to pause. We're just going to go under these things. So do we have any other questions or queries or anything? Even if they're not related? So now that you're here in California?
No, Chicago.
Chicago. Okay, so it's late where both of you are. Okay.
Can you?
And you're Palestinian, Nader?
Yes, alhamdulillah.
I could tell by the name.
Okay, that's good. Well, a lot of people think Nadir is Egyptian.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't realize they use that in
Yeah,
Egypt.
or there's actually many